There we go. Okay, I'll leave that running. We want to try and pack as much as possible into this afternoon. What I do want to do is just sort of pause and give everyone a second to reflect on that process that we just ended before lunch, which was to kind of force yourself to stop in the Rhino world and print something out and then move on to the next phase of it. You know, whether it's taking a pencil to it or a pen or photographing it or whatever it might be. Does anyone have any reflections on like what that felt like? Just kind of like put yourself in the mind of what it felt like just before lunch, where Ricardo and I were walking around and we're saying, you're out of time, you've got to print. What was going through your mind?
I always think it's quite good because these are the kind of things you can spend absolutely hours on.
You can.
You could continuously do it to sort of
yes.
perfection. So it's really a good strategy.
Absolutely. So there was a huge temptation to not stop. Once you're in, there's a huge temptation to never get out. And I've seen and I've felt it. The students who basically you get into Rhino and then you work incredibly hard, all hours. And then at the end of the week, there's nothing to show. Because you haven't actually then taken that thing out or whatever it is. So
to add to that,
yeah.
The real issue is you invest all your time in making these models, but in the end, the images that you need for your presentation, your portfolio submission, are actually only a fraction of all that model that you've made. So there's a lot of model that is actually not used, and you've spent days and days working in it. And then the situation would be that the students say the submission on Friday, they'll be working until sort of Thursday on the model, and then expecting they're going to get their outputs from tomorrow. Not realizing, of course, that extracting those plans and extracting those sections and those views are still so incredibly raw that in the end their submissions were very poor and not well graded because the quality of the outputs from Rhino are just not good enough. So you need to spend a lot of time taking it into Illustrator and Photoshop and hand drawing it, and etc., to actually make something new out of it. So getting into that good habit of coming out is really very, very helpful.
I will show you a final project, a finished project of a large-scale scheme. This is a student scheme. This is my student project. So this is not real. This is not built. But I'll show you two things. One of which is the Rhino model from which it all comes. And then the second which is all the work that then goes on top of that in order to make a final image, a final plan, a final section, a final drawing, a final render, whatever you might need. But what I'm hoping is that you've learned what that feeling is of I can't stop, I can't get out, I can't stop. I just need to fix this. I just need to fix this next thing. I just need to fix this next thing. That's the thing to kill before you move on, because you're using this computer like a tool. You're not visual effects artists. You're not. Your role in life is not to be a 3D modeler. Your role in life is to be an architect. I want to mention a resource, a really, really important resource, which is that you don't actually need someone to stand in front of you with a big screen and tell you how every single Rhino command works. If you want to use this tool, there are plenty of ways to learn this tool. And what I want to do is just kind of give you what I have found to be the best resource. And you're going to look at it and you'll be like, what? Surely it's a YouTube channel, or find someone online who will teach this. And there are YouTube channels, and you can learn Rhino just by Googling, how do I do this? That's a great way of learning. But if you Google Rhino training level 1 PDF, Rhino level 1 training, the first hit is an Amazon Web Services link to a PDF, Rhino level 1 training. We're on Rhino version 8 right now. I think you've got Rhino version 8 installed on the university laptops. This is the training that was produced for Rhino version 6. but it's exactly the same. They just don't change Rhino very much, and the processes are exactly the same. So Rhino Level 1 training, PDF. And this is what you want to read if you want to learn how to use everything in Rhino. Now, I'll tell you now, you do not need to know more than a handful of approaches and a handful of commands in Rhino to be better than most people. I was speaking to someone who used Maya. Maya is like incredibly complicated. And I was like, how did you learn Maya? Maya takes years and years to understand what all the buttons do. And she said, well, I don't know what all the buttons do. And she is an expert in Maya. And she was like, I probably know about 5% of what the actual commands are. But that's enough. I can do everything I need to do. I can do anything I want to in this software using these 5% of commands. So don't read the whole thing, because this is how many pages? This is 350 pages. But there are some amazing things in here. This PDF is full of incredible walkthroughs of exercises of how you make certain things in Rhino. Now, most of these objects, you need to be aware, most of the objects that I'll talk you through making are like stuff you can hold in your hand. Like I say, remember when you first start up Rhino, the default scale is like small millimeter things. So there'll be like, I don't know, there'll be something down here that'll be like a camera, or maybe this is a boat. A boat is quite nice. That's a bit more of a scale. But most of these things won't be architecture. So this isn't teaching you to use this tool to do architecture. This is teaching you what the buttons do. And that's the resource that's really helpful. And what I want to suggest actually is a really good thing to do is do Control F and find the rubber duck. It's chapter 9, page 179 in this PDF. I can send you a link afterwards. If you can make this rubber duck in Rhino, you got it. You got everything you need to just plow on and design some architecture. Because this rubber duck is quite hard to make, but it puts together all of the principles that I showed you this morning about deforming surfaces, about trimming stuff with lines, about adding stuff to different layers, about keeping things organized. Basically, this rubber duck, you start with a sphere. You follow every single command. It'll tell you step by step what to do. Type this in here. Now we started with a sphere. Now we've got two spheres. We go down and then we sort of flatten the bottom of one of the spheres. And then we sort of squash it out a little bit, starting to look a little bit like a duck here. And then we kind of drag the tail up. We got a tail there. And then we kind of maybe make the tail a little bit more defined. And then we need to make the beak. So we can pull this. And all it is doing exactly what we were doing this morning. We start with a simple object and we move our control points around. And where we need to, we kind of trim and take care of things. This is a really nice move where you blend two surfaces together. So you can make a really nice curved surface between two other surfaces. That's how they make the neck of this rubber duck. But you can read this in your own time. It's a nice piece of homework. And the analogy I always make with Rhino is it's really like playing a musical instrument. Hands up if you have ever played a musical instrument. Even just like the recorder when you were like 5 years old. Yeah, okay. So you know what it's like. You pick up the instrument, and the first time that you have anything to do with this musical instrument, you're all fingers and thumbs. You don't know how to use it. It's incredibly frustrating. You don't know what you're doing. And then to make it worse, your teacher says you need to learn scales. And you're like, no, not scales. It's the most boring thing ever. But then when you get really good, the scales are your friend, because suddenly all of these little things that you've been doing come together in a symphony that I can show you, what a full finished project looks like. It's exactly the same. It's just bigger in scale. That's all it is. So this is a really, really nice little exercise. If you've worked your way through the duck, then basically you can, there's a load of other stuff in this PDF, but this is the resource to go away and kind of dive into if you're really interested in this stuff. Let's have does anyone want to hold up some of the stuff that they've done before lunch? You've got some printouts, hopefully. You've got something that you got out of Rhino and you started maybe a process of sketching over it. Anyone want to show it off? Maybe everyone just hold up your bits of paper all together. and see where you've got to. Yeah. Oh, amazing, amazing. Yes, yes, great, lovely. You've got the starting point there. Fantastic. You've got the starting point for exactly what we were talking about before, which is now what comes next. Now you can think about what you actually want to design, what the spatial expression is going to be. And I want to introduce you to a project. Let's take a look at, this is a project from a number of years ago now, but it still seems to end up being one of the nicest ones to look at. There we go. Right, so this is an image of the outside of a student project. So this is the kind of scale maybe that you're working at. Is that right? So, this is a person, and this is actually, I think this was like a ticket office or something. This is the Botanical Gardens in Oxford. So this is a real site. This is a real place you can go and visit. And what I want to show you is this is the image that comes at the end of the project. And I want to point out a few things. So the first thing I want to point out is that this image is trying to capture an answer to your question of what your concept was at the beginning of that process. Yeah, so you set up a concept, and then what you're searching for is a way of distilling that down into maybe one or two images that really tell this narrative, tell this story about how your design is going to engage with the site, the context, your concept, the people who are in it, all of those kinds of things. And so obviously your images are going to include people. I really hope your images include people. Your image is going to probably be quite heavily reliant on the surrounding context. But what I want to point out here is I haven't modeled any of this surrounding context. So this is a photograph I took on the site. And then what I did was I modeled this bit that you can see here, this kind of crazy thing with all the timber fins and this weird shape. This project was all actually about water. So it was about rainwater falling and being directed in certain directions. And there was a particular language about the curves that rainwater make when they fall down surfaces and this kind of thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to break apart this image. I also want to show you this image, which is similar. That's an image from inside. And this is, I think, probably a more successful image because I can inhabit this space. I'm having a conversation about what it really feels like to be inside this space. And also I want people to understand that, for me, the concept was all about the direction of the flow of water. So I want people to be able to see it on the inside of my building, which is why I've got these timber fins kind of coming through the inside. I want people to be able to see that this impacts the way plants grow, right? Or whatever it might be. And I want people to see where they are in the world and how this relates to the context. I want to inhabit it. I want to feel it, and I want it to be evocative and atmospheric, not just here is my design. A good example of here is my design would be something like this. All the work I'm showing you is my work. So I'm not rubbishing anyone else's work. I'm rubbishing my own work here. But I'll show you something like this, which is what I do. I have done, this was many years ago, but doing stuff for a practice. Could really do with this. There we go. Right. Now, clearly it's a boring building, right? There's nothing particularly exciting about that building. But what does this image show you? What does it make you feel? It doesn't make you feel really anything at all. It just says, this is what we are going to put on this field. There's no real emotion to it. And the difference is actually quite a subtle one. It's not just the pixels that are different. It's the fact that this was designed, and then at the end, they gave me the model and they told me to make a render of it. Whereas this was done probably, I think, 3 or 4 weeks before I'd finished designing the program. I didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out, but I produced this image. This image is part of my design process. It isn't the final outcome. And that's what I want to push you towards. That's why I'm spending all this time saying, get out of the digital, produce something with it. Don't wait until the last day and then say, I'm going to click render and then it'll all be done. Because that's not how you make images that really capture the concept that you're trying to convey. And these images then actually feed back into the decisions you're going to make, because you can put them in front of a tutor and you have a conversation. You say, oh, that's really successful. That bit doesn't work quite so well. How would we update that? But you can keep the image, and the image becomes the final thing. But if you think of renders, as just this thing that happens at the end, they're useless to you. And you'll become the kind of monkey in the architecture practice that just gets asked to do it at the end. It's similar with even projects that are quite nice. Let's have a look at this one. This is a really interesting project. It's not just a big box on an industrial estate somewhere, but this is the main gate to the Cullum Science Facility where they do fusion. So this is like where fusion is being invented in Oxfordshire. And it's a cool project. It's like buildings, it's a big curvy circle, and it's got loads of cool stuff in it. But they did the same thing, which is they designed the thing, and then they came at the end to me and they said, hey, can you make a rendered view of this project? I'm like, well, okay, but that's not how you use this image making technique. Let's have a look at some of these. See if there's any that we can do. Now, the other thing that's going on is if you look at this image, what you'll notice, hopefully if you kind of zoom in, is there's a lot going on here that is trying to add some kind of degree of atmosphere or feeling, or like I want to feel like you're really there and there's real people here, whatever. But there's time constraints going on here, which is you push this to the end of the project, you're under a time pressure. And in practice, you're always under time pressure. I got given the brief, and the brief was, you've got 2 days. How many images can you give me? 17, 18, go. And now, and what you're limited to then is this. This is actually, I can't remember what program it is, but you'll be familiar with the kind of rendering engines like Enscape, Twinmotion, D5. I mean, they're great at what they do, but what they push you down a path where basically you just drag and drop a person, like a weird 3D person, into your model, and then you just go click render, and then you're done. And there's no thought behind, there's no care behind the image making, there's no design behind the image making. It's just like, oh, what can you do? I mean, maybe I like this image, but it's deathly dull. I don't want to go on and on about it, but like, do you kind of see that one of those things is used as a design tool, and the other one is just, I'm going through the motions, I've got to do this thing, because...
Yeah, I was going to say, one thing's important, that if you have a render that looks too shiny and too finished, it doesn't evoke the conversation for design development. So it's important that things show a certain openness. Mm-hmm. Because then the conversations are about improving the architecture and looking at the spaces, and there's potential for growth. But if the image is trying to look all shiny and polished, the only discussion is whether that's the right piece of furniture.
Or like, why did you choose this person rather than this person?
Yeah, it's not an architectural discussion in terms of like discourse about design process or spaces or materiality and so on. So when you're going to be rendering, it's important to retain a sense of sketchiness, an incompleteness to it, right? That it evokes still the notion of a conversation. Hence why sketches and so on are very, very good, because they allow the viewer to still imagine the things that are not there, and it engages in a different way.
I will show you, and now I want to basically, I've shown you some of those images, but I want to completely rip them apart now, down to their bare bones, because you've basically got most of the tools that you would need to go through this process now. So I'll start with the external one. I think it will be this one. Let's see. Let's find out. Hopefully it loads and doesn't crash my computer. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So here we are in the wonderful world of Photoshop. And instantly you know something's going on here, which is that we're in Rhino. We've modeled some stuff. But then what we need to do is we need to get some kind of visual two-dimensional representation out of Rhino, and sometimes that's going to be a screenshot, but sometimes it's going to be a render, and I can show you a little bit how we do that. And that render is going to then not be the finished article. It's not going to be the finished item. The finished item is going to be some layer of other tools that are going to come up. And one of those tools might be Photoshop. Another one might be Illustrator for line work and line weights. Another one might be InDesign to kind of bring this into a page that's part of a presentation or a portfolio or a booklet or whatever it might be. The way you even lay out the page around that image tells you a lot, right? And then there might be more tools. Basically you're layering these things up rather than searching for a single click that does it. So what I'll do is I'll turn all these layers off now, all the way down. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to, let's have a look. Yeah, here we go. This is what comes out of Rhino. I'll zoom in a little bit. In fact, you'll probably be able to notice that actually the quality of modeling isn't all that great. You can see here, what are these surfaces? Well, they're just lofts. There's nothing, there's no more than you already know how to do, right? I've got a surface here there's this construction curve that kind of comes around and then goes down. This is a little bit like the Serpentine Pavilion. As you can see, I maybe was influenced a little bit by Zaha. It's okay, just, allow yourself to have the ability to copy. That's okay. And then there's this kind of line that comes up from the ground and up and then down again and round. And then what I wanted is there's this kind of nice pond thing here. And then I've got some really interesting, much more complex kind of fins that are sitting on top. But you know how to flow a whole load of complex things onto a surface. You've done that this morning, right? And that's it. That's all I've done in Rhino. And then I've just exported that. And this transparent background there's nothing there. But then what I've done is I've gone to the site, and you are really lucky because your site is just down the road, right? You go to the site and you stand in the place where you put your Rhino camera. That's where I showed you how to turn the camera on, and you could take that point, you can drag it to a particular place, and you can say, right, how tall am I? My eyes are 5'3" above the ground. So I'm going to put my camera position 5'3" above the ground. I'm going to place it here. I'm going to stand here in real life and take the same photo. Well, then they're going to match up, aren't they? So here's the background. And then you go, okay, well, we're getting somewhere, but there's something very much not finished about this, right? Because literally all that's happened is I've just kind of plonked this thing onto this photo. We're not quite there yet. I just want to close the timeline and so zoom in here a little bit. But already you could have a conversation. Already you could just print this out and have a conversation with a tutor. This would be more than good enough to have a conversation. Okay, cool. So now we're going to do a few things. What we probably want to do here is we want to, I'm just going to take this site. By the way, this is the existing building. So I haven't even really had to do anything. I just kind of pasted over the top of it with my design. I'm going to adjust the levels, the hue and saturation, the vibrance, just kind of tone everything down a little bit. It was too much of a sunny day and my iPhone was obviously just everything was just too much. And then what have we got here? We've got a little bit of tidying up where I've just kind of used some clone tool. And then I've also got here, I've ended up adding a bit of shadow. What am I going to do now is I'm going to do this. And then in Photoshop, are you familiar with the masking tool in Photoshop? Just most of you've used it. It's again, you know what I was saying about like if you know 3 or 4% of what a program can do, you know enough. Everything I do in Photoshop, it's the masking tool. It's literally it. It's masking and brushing. It's all I ever do. I'll enable that. And basically what's going on here is I'm just deleting a little bit around my building so that the right things are in front of it and the right things are behind it. Now, already, I could pretty much believe that this is a final image. I could believe it. But yeah, there's something about it that feels too clinical. Like I've just plonked this in place, and it certainly doesn't feel like it has this relationship with the site that I want it to have. And the thing that it needs is, first of all, it needs this tree to cast a shadow on that building. And the way we did that is that literally I found a PNG of a tree online. There we go. Tree PNG cut out. It has to be a transparent one. And then I brought it in. I made it black and white. And then I just basically sort of skewed it down and then pasted it over the top, but made it a shadow instead of just a number of pixels. So literally what you see here, this thing here, that's just a PNG tree just sort of pasted over the top. Don't have to spend long on it because we want to be making these images. Like ideally, you want to be bringing something like this to a tutor each week, not just waiting till the end and having one. It looks like I can't remember which one I chose. I think that one's probably nice. It sort of fits, doesn't it, quite nicely? But potentially that's the one I ended up. No, there you go. That's right. Because look at that tree and look at where the sun is coming. We understand where the sun is coming from the shadows on the buildings. And we can see, look, there's this big shadow here from a tree that's over on this side of the image. So all I'm doing is just trying to match them up. Then I found a picture of the right kind of person to live inside my building, and I've photoshopped him in. Just cut him out from the internet and pasted him in. There you go. And then this guy needs to have a shadow because he's also part of the sunlight. So what's that? All that is just some black brush strokes that just turn the opacity down. And I'm not being super fussy about it. I'm being quite like this would not count as like a hyper realistic render because this is a design process. It's part of a tool that we would use. Then what I might need to do is this is a cool technique. One of the first things you might notice with the final image, do we have it? No, I don't have it. Is that you can see the rays of light as if there's like fog in the sky. You don't have to render fog because that takes hours and loads of GPU cycles. You can create it in Photoshop. Here you do. What you do is that you make your image super, super contrasty and you turn it black and white and then you blur it. And you blur it using a filter, blur, motion blur. And we give it a direction for that motion blur. And you take this black and white stuff, this really high threshold thing, and you just basically smear it out in a particular direction. You have to match it up with where you think the sun is in the image. So I'm going to turn those back off again. And now suddenly I've got this motion blur here. And then I can do the same thing going in a slightly different direction so that it ends up fooling your eye into thinking that you can see the God rays kind of diverging. But how long does this take? This takes it's 10 minutes in Photoshop. It's not a big thing that you have to kind of lose your mind over.
Did you turn the opacity down on the map thing?
Yeah. I can try and do it again. What you do basically is this layer here. It actually comes from, we do this, first of all. then there's a really useful command. This is one of my commands. Apart from a layer mask, the command is Control-Shift-Alt-E. Control-Shift-Alt-E. What Control-Shift-Alt-E does is that whatever is on your screen and whatever layer you have selected, everything that's visible below that layer, it will then pixelize it and then make a new layer on top. It's like flattening, but it keeps all the layers below it. So now I've got this really interesting black and white thing that's pixel layer on top. And it's the result of all the layers that I had selected. Now what you can do is I can take this layer and I can do a filter, blur, motion blur. Now this is probably going to make my computer have a little bit of a meltdown, but then I want my distance to be quite high. Do you see where I'm kind of going with this? Yeah? Just start with the black and white, and I blur it out, and then actually there's also a little bit of Gaussian blur in there as well, just because these lines are a bit too harsh, so I could just put a Gaussian blur on top of it. There we go. And then this one here it's set to a screen mode. So a screen mode is basically like only going to brighten the layers below it. So that white and that black. Black means don't do anything with the pixels underneath. White, just kind of up the brightness where you need to. And we do the same thing here, and we do the same thing here. And then we're done. And we print it, we put it in front of someone, and we have a conversation about it. Now, I've kind of made that look easy. That probably did take me half a day. But it's not like weeks and weeks of work. And given I'm going to imagine you're pretty good at Photoshop already. Hopefully what I've shown you is kind of like fairly possible with the skills you've already got. Or at least look around the room, find someone who just nodded and ask them for help. Okay. I think this is a more interesting image because it's the internal image. Now this one, there is more rendering going on. There is a bit more focus on what these materials are and how they're applied, and then how this internal experience is going to be. But the most important thing is you can see here, I've got some layers here called like left God rays, right God rays. I can turn those off. And we go back to, there we go, just a fairly simple, don't really have that same layer of kind of atmospherics to it, but at least, we're starting. Then the other thing is, I'm just going to take all these off. This is exactly the same as the other image, but just the mirror image of it, which is that I've taken site photos, and I'm just going to turn all of these green bits off. Oh yeah, there's a lot of layers on this one. This one is a real hybrid drawing. There we go. There's more to talk about here. Firstly, I've got a site photo that I took when I was knocking around. I've got another site photo. I've got another site photo. I've got another site photo. Do these two match up? Not exactly. Do I care? No. I want to get a concept across. I don't want to get perfection. And then what you'll notice is basically this image has these like transparent bits where I can see through the glass. That's how it's been rendered. I can see through. So I need to decide, well, what could I see if I was standing there on the site? And actually this one is much easier to do because literally all I needed to do was like collage these site photos into place so that it looked believable. No one's going to actually build your design. I don't know if you knew this. Like, no one's going to build it. And that's beautifully freeing. Because if you're in your image, you need to just move that building just a foot to the left. You're allowed to. You can do it this year. When you get to practice, you can't move buildings a foot to the left just because you want to. But right now, don't worry about it. Just let the image answer the concept that you're trying to end up getting across. Now, what you can see here is there's there's a big focus on these materials. I can see these holes in the roof. They're just make hole, trim a hole in the roof. You know how to do that. You've seen it today. You can see my modeling is really not very good. Look at this hideous curve there. Ooh, I wouldn't do that these days. And look how the texture mapping isn't quite matching up, and I've got some like wooden slats that are going the wrong way. Again, it's not the first thing you see, is it? You don't notice those things. You just get caught up in, oh, this is what it would feel like. And then the first thing is I'm going to get the lighting right as much as possible. So here we are. This is exactly what's going on here. I've got these really nice blurry rays coming through. And then I've got this thing is, again, an image of a tree that's a PNG that I downloaded from the internet, turned black and white, and just added, I know there's a tree here, so I needed to add some extra shadowing just there. Same thing.
So were the rays a similar process to the other?
Yeah, exactly the same thing. Yeah, just, crunch it, make it black and white, and then make a new copy of that and then blur it in the direction you want to. And then you'll need to mask it in and out in different ways. But this bit here is probably a little bit too harsh for my taste. But once you've got a significant, like an indication of it, it just becomes part of the conversation, not the finished article. So now we've got this really interesting thing where in Rhino, I knew that this is the botanical gardens. So I want this concept to be that I'm coming in, I'm buying a ticket at the ticket desk, and then I'm going through these doors, and then I'm into the botanical gardens, but I'm not yet in the botanical gardens. So what I want to do is have this mediated space where I'm both outside and inside. And effectively, this is like a big porch, right? Now, it's a very fancy porch, but effectively it's a porch. When I'm through these doors, I'm outside, but I want some of the botanical gardens to come in to that. But what I'm not going to do in Rhino is try and model plants. Why would I do that? Like, plants are incredibly complicated and they're very organic, and it's going to take me ages to model a tiny leaf and then a thing. You don't want to model plants in Rhino. What you want to do is you want to go on the internet, find yourself a PNG of a plant, and then drop it in Photoshop. So the first thing is I know this isn't going to be made of concrete. It's going to be made of soil. So I've found some soil and I Photoshopped it in. And that is a really helpful thing, which says, I'm going to stop doing that thing in Rhino because it would take me hours when it could take me 30 seconds in Photoshop instead. That's yet another reason to get out, you see? You're giving yourself an out. It's like, oh, I don't need to model that. I'll Photoshop it. Brilliant. Off we go. And then I've labeled these really, really well, as you can see. Image thing. What's that? Hey, there's a little plant. There we go. There's a little plant there. I'll just zoom in and we can see these plants starting to arrive. Image thing copy. Where's he? No idea. Oh, no. Yeah, there's two of them there. There we go. I've added them together. 35FD, blah, 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 blah. I downloaded it from the internet. I chucked it in. Okay. Then I've got some mossy texture, and I've got some more plants, and I've got some more plants, and I've got some more mossy things, and I've got some more things. And I'm basically just layering up a whole heap of vegetation that on their own look pretty rubbish. One of the things that's going on in each one of these situations is that I also have to make sure that I balance the brightness and the contrast of each of these images as they come in. And with these ones, I think all I did was I changed the opacity of them a little bit. And also, if I needed to, I would just change that layer image adjustments levels. So you can just tone the colors down or tone the colors up to match the rest of the image. But they're pretty simple little things, I'm literally just adding in this vegetation as a two-dimensional set of hybrid drawings over the top. And then what I've done is I've taken that whole load of stuff. There we go. And the whole thing has just started to brighten up a little bit. I'm not entirely sure whether I left that on or not. I don't think I did. Let's find out. Then I got this guy here, which is a whole folder full of more plants. And again, each one of these will have been made dark, and I'll have like twisted it. You know, if you bring in an image, you can click on the corner of an image and hold down Control and you skew it. That's literally all that's happening here. I'm just skewing it and hanging it from these rafters. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, 16 of these things hanging down from there. But now you start to believe that when you go through these doors, you're really outside. Yeah? Because I'm communicating through the image that that's what's going on. And then, I put in a person, but I really hated the person, so I got rid of them again. And then this is a final sort of like color grade, basically, just to get it ready. And then there's the image. And I'm hoping I don't want to make it sound too easy, because actually it took a bit of planning and preparation. But if you've got the site down the road, you can take as many photos as you like, and you can take a simple model, add some material to it, and I'll show you hopefully this afternoon a really quick ways of doing that. And then basically you could be in the mode of creating these kinds of images as part of your design process. I do want to show you one last image, the technical one. Is that all right? Are we okay time-wise?
Very good, yeah.
Okay, cool. Which is doing a different thing. Those images are about human inhabitation, about how it feels to be a human in a place. The third image I want to show you is much more of a technical image. And will this load or not? Who knows? Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. That actually is there. A better version. It's a different project, slightly bigger in scale. There it is. I wonder if I can make this full screen. Can I make this full screen? View, full screen. There we go. So this image is again a number of layers, but they're slightly different layers. So the first layer you'll notice is there's text and annotation on top of this image, because it's a technical image. It's trying to convey technical information. So there's a tool that I would use for that, which would be Illustrator or InDesign. So I know that there's a layer of Illustrator and InDesign in order to get to this image. Then underneath that, I know that there's pixels in this image. This is a render that's come from Rhino. So I know that there's going to be some Photoshop involved, because we never just do a render and then that's it. We're going to have done something to add some kind of complexity to this image. And then before that, we'll have had the conversation in Rhino about what materials things are, how they're lit, how we've set up our camera view, and what we're trying to aim for at the end of that process. So most people, when they see this for the first time, tend to think that I made a physical model. I don't know whether I kind of give the game away by saying it's a render right at the beginning. I don't mind telling you that. But most people think it's a physical model. And the reason they think it's a physical model is because they see the materials and they see the lighting and they believe it. You know, your eyes are really good at just saying, oh, I believe that. I believe that that's real. This kind of convinces you. Now, what we'll do is have a look at exactly what's going on here. Oh, can you go away? There we go. The other thing that convinces you it's real is I'm using the kind of materials that you would make a model out of. So you can play with people's perceptions by saying, right, I'm going to render this, but I'm going to render it in cardboard and baseboard, and maybe a little bit of like plastic or something. And then suddenly you can convince people, or you can have a conversation about what a model would be like if you made it in real life, but you've made it in a computer. The two are kind of weirdly interchangeable, that ideally you want to use the skills from one to influence the other. Let's have a look, if we can, I wonder if it'll load, at the Rhino model for this. Might take a moment. It's 316 megabytes, which is not good practice, but you have to forgive me because I was younger then. Let's see whether this loads up. While we're waiting, any questions as I've been talking about this image making process?
Does it seem all achievable for you guys? Yeah. You can make this workflow become part of your process.
Good. I believe in you.
So now if you sort of just look at the screens, those images that you had before, what you produced this morning, seem somewhat exciting. When you look at them again, it's like, the sort of computer quality is not very nice. So we really want to be as much as possible speaking about the atmosphere, the materials, the occupation, the special occupation, etc., right? The implementation on site and so on. That's always very much part of the design process. So not to remove that atmospheric context from your process.
It's actually quite a lot of work to add like real atmosphere because the computer is so clinical and digital and grey. It's everything that you do is kind of fighting against that. Let's continue. Let's see if this has finished loading. Has it finished loading? Oh. By the way, there's a really useful tool in Rhino where you go expand your viewport settings. You go set view, and there's a thing called named views. And named views allows you to save different views that you've set up. Let's go to this one. There we go. Here we are. And because it's messed up all the things, I'm going to recenter this viewport. There we go. Okay. So you'll see there's a few things going on here. The first is that these things here are currently obscuring everything. And the reason is that instead of, let's take a look at the actual final view. It's not in Photoshop, is it? It's in here. Do you see all these like mesh things? The concept of this design was again about water, and it was a hotel designed on a hillside in Siena in Italy. And the idea was that the fog rolls up the hillside of the mountain in the morning, and if you have the right kind of plastic mesh over the facade of your building, the fog condenses on the mesh, and then this dew curtain like captures all the water that you need. And so literally the idea behind the hotel is that the hotel subsists on the dew that forms on the outer skin of it. So it was really important to show this mesh. Now, what I could do is I could model every single strand of this mesh. It would be a really, really painstaking and time-consuming thing to do. Instead, what you can do is you can simply make one lofted surface, which you know how to do because you know how to loft surfaces, and you can apply a material that's just a series of lines that lets the light through and then stops the light, and then lets the light through and then stops the light. So actually what I'm going to do is, what's that? That is Glulambig Meshy Mesh Subdivided Mesh Surfs. Let's find that layer. Do you see how important it is to keep your layers organized? This would be impossible if I hadn't got a system. Glulambig Meshy Mesh. There we go. I got it. So now what I have is these kind of structural things. And then I've got obviously some quite intricate detailing for the overall structure that's going to hold this thing up. It looks a little bit like a Grimshaw building or something like that. And then I've got the individual rooms that also clearly, for some reason, there's a whole wall build-up going on here. This might... Yeah, there we go. The actual image, I think, was a different one where I didn't have this wall. I turned it off or something. But you can see there that a lot of these things are modeled very, very simply. This is a bedside table. It's just a box. We all know how to build a box. We just build a box. You don't have to spend a long time on it. This is a bed. It's very simple. It's a box. It's a box. It's a box. And then there's a filleted corner. And you can read in the Rhino thing about how to fillet corners. This is some furniture. It's a box. And then I've punched some holes in the box. I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. Just most things at the end of the day are a box with a hole in it. And hopefully your architecture isn't a box with a hole in it. But that's the bit where you can spend a bit more time. Then let's see. I wonder, this is a very old version of V-Ray and Rhino, so I wonder whether we're going to get some problems trying to load this up. But let's just see. Let's just see whether any of this is actually going to work. I'm going to guess not. No, it's not. Okay, well, I'll come back to that after a break. But then the second thing I want to show you after this model is the 1-to-20 model of the same project. Sorry, not the 1-to-20, the GA model. Here we go. Open this file. Oh yeah, it's gonna not let me use V-Ray anymore. Oh well. Here we are. Now this image here is another one of that same approach, which is this image here. And this is a picture that I took when I was in Siena. And then this is the Rhino model that is rendered. And then Photoshop is all the fog coming in. Now, do you see that the thought process behind the image is fairly simple? It's the same thing again. So I've got a photo. I've got a concept that I want to convey. So, of course, my image has to be covered in fog. There's a point here that's actually quite helpful, which is most of the time when you're working really hard on a model, you really want to show it off. You really want to show everyone how much effort and time you've put into it. One of the things that's really powerful is realizing that your model can be completely unfinished when you produce your best images. Each one of these boxes is a hotel room, but it's just a box. Now I've got a separate model, the one that I just showed you, which went into real detail about every single one of these boxes and showed it in great detail at 1-to-20 scale. But I don't have to put it all in the same model. That's a really important secret, especially in a student project. Because if I tried to have this model where I put every single one of these things with the same level of details that I showed in this image, how unusable would that file be? It would be gigabytes in size. And every time I opened it and it crashed, I'd have to wait another 45 minutes for it to open again. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you want to say very clearly what is it you're trying to do. And if you're trying to convey a technical piece of information, you might do that with a model that's just one slice part of your building. Yeah.
Just to reinforce the idea of the heist, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know you want to get an output.
Yeah.
So you're going to go into Rhino, you're going to open a file, copy maybe from one model into a new model space, so you can simplify certain things.
Yeah.
Replicate, duplicate, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Get your image so that you can get out into Photoshop.
Exactly. Yeah.
A conversational process imagery.
Yeah. And the temptation is to think that you've got to have all the answers in one model at the end of it. And the answer is you don't. You do not have to know what's going on here in this model. I happen to know that there are some escalators. Have I modeled the escalators? No. Do I need to model the escalators? No. It'll take me hours and hours and hours, but I know the image I want to take is from this angle. So what do I need to show? I need to show the facade, and everything else is, who cares? Now, I am going to need to, here we go. I am going to need to have something of a kind of 2D, this is a Make 2D drawing, right? That's come from that same model. And then what I want to show you is, well, how do I make sure my plan is like super great? How do I work my plan into this? Well, I work my plan into this like this. So I take this model and I say, well, I'm pretty happy with this model. It's pretty cool. I like it. I go, okay, I'm going to take my clipping plane. Thank you very much. I'm going to draw my clipping plane. And for some reason, my clipping plane is like the wrong way up. So let's just, there we go. There's my clipping plane. And I can make a plan, a floor plan, by dragging my clipping plane around, right? Make a floor plan out of my thing. And you'll see literally as I go up the building, I've got another floor plate. I've got another floor plate. And I can start seeing some hotel rooms appearing. Like, I've kind of worked out how the overall scheme is going to work just by massing it out. And there's nothing really special about these boxes. They're just boxes. That's all that's going on. Now, I've put a lot of effort into the facade here, but that's the only bit that I've put that effort into. And then what I can do is with that clipping plane enabled, I can go into my top view and I can do a Make 2D of that. But that is not my plan. That is not the finished article of the floor plan. What I need to do is I need to do another one of those things where I then have another set of hybrid layers on top where I bring that into Illustrator, or I bring that into CAD, or I bring that into InDesign, and I have layers and layers and layers. And what I did was I actually ended up bringing it into another Rhino model, because Rhino can do 2D CAD stuff just as well as CAD can. So here it is. And I'm going to hopefully show you the process. And the process takes a very long time. Here we go. I want to open all these. Will this work? Open them all. Come on, don't fail me now. Work. Come on. Clearly not. Let's go back here. Here we are. Has it worked? Oh, it says not responding. That's not a good sign, is it? Here we are. Start with the ground floor plan. Okay, this is what comes out from the original Rhino model, and it's just cut. And all I can see is the ground and like this weird little thing. And I go, well, that's not very good, is it? Let's move on. And then I've added a little bit more context, and I can see the surrounding buildings. This is at the top of the hill. This is at the bottom of the hill. And I can see, I've kind of worked out what my floor plate's going to do here. And then I've brought in all these kind of flow lines from the surrounding topology. And then what I realize is obviously, I've got to cut through the hillside because this thing is on a hill. So I'm going to have to cut through the hillside. So actually half of my image is going to be just cut through a hill, which isn't great. I really am annoyed by Gemini right now. Can Gemini go away? How do I make Gemini go away? Here we are. And now we're starting to build in an understanding of where these floor plates go, what the internal walls are going to be like. They're not modeled. They're just line work that I'm doing over the top. This is like CAD. I'm basically doing this pretty much in CAD. And I'll fast forward because basically this is me every couple of hours just stopping and exporting this to a PDF. Because now I want this conversation about exactly where the hillside goes and how this kind of big, escalator appears and has a relationship with the ground floor. I'll keep going. And now I'm going to add some trees. And all of this is done in 2 dimensions on top. Are you following? So I haven't modeled any of this. This is all 2D line work on top of a cut of the model. And already, probably you can imagine that this is probably me coming and having a conversation with my tutor maybe 3 or 4 weeks before I am finished, right? But then we fast forward, and by the end, we've got something which is looking a lot more like I could believe this in a floor plan. This is a 1 to 100 or 1 to 200, I think, something like that. And it doesn't have all the information, but not one drawing doesn't hold all the information for my project. It's the multiple of drawings all together that hold all that information. So you're not looking at the model as something where you put your clipping pane through, you cut your model, and you say, well, I'm done. It's like that only gets you 5% of the way there, and the other 95% is like just line work. And you can do it in Illustrator, you can do it in CAD, you can do it in Rhino. It doesn't really matter. You can even do it by hand, right? You print it out, and that's what you build on. I think probably it's 3 o'clock. We're due a break. And any questions and queries on that process? I'm aware that what I haven't shown you is kind of like technical things as much, but hopefully it's a helpful kind of, this is how to approach it, and you've already got some of the technical knowledge already that you need.
Any questions you'd like to ask Christian about that process or things that you might be thinking in your own projects?
I was going to ask, when you're modelling interiors of space, how do you make that manageable in Rhino when you're still having to move inside walls to put in things inside rooms and all of that? And sort of also, how do you lock items to floors that aren't your ground plane?
Yeah.
You have like a series of levels.
Yep. So the first thing is usually it's perfectly fine to have an interior model and an exterior model. In fact, that's exactly what's going on with that project is like, I know what it looks like from outside because I've got a model where I put all my effort onto the facade and the inside is empty. And then I have another model where I only model the one room that I want the view from and anything I can actually see, but everything else is like, doesn't exist. Don't need it. There's this really nice principle in terms of making images, which is either your project should take up maybe 1/3 of the page and 2/3 of the page is your context. Or you should zoom into only showing like 1/3 of your project, and the rest of it you just don't show. And the temptation is always to not do either of those two things and basically produce an image which is where your project goes to the edge of the page. You don't show any context, but you're also showing only all of your work. And it's because you care about the work that you've done. Whereas if you split up your project into, well, I know I want this image, and this is a moment I want to explore, then what you can have is two models on the go at the same time, where you've got an interior model, which you're pushing ahead with, and you've got an exterior model that you're pushing ahead with. But if you try and bring those two together, really difficult. So that's how I would solve that problem. In terms of locking things to floors that aren't a zero plane, the secret is this. Where am I? Can I turn clipping planes off? Yeah, here we go. What's going on here? I'll just delete that. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, here we are. Let's say I was working on a second floor. Here we are. And I've got a second floor that is 3 meters above this one. I want to start doing some work over here. I'm going to switch to my ghosted view. Do you see my grid is down here? This is the floor plane. This is the construction plane of how I'm currently working. What I can do is go into C planes. This used to have a really funny joke. Rhino likes jokes. And C planes used to have a little icon on it, which was a plane with floats. Like literally a little airplane with a float thing, so a plane that could land on the sea. And called it C planes. You get the joke, then you could go and work for McNeil, who make Rhino. But what you can do is there's an option in here for set C plane to surface. And I can click that and it'll say select surface to orient C plane to. And I can select this floor plate. And then it says, do you want to choose the origin? I'll choose the origin. Maybe the origin could be like a corner. And I can just press enter. And then what's happened is my grid has now moved to be like literally attached to that corner of my floor plate. And now if I want to draw something or make a box, it goes straight there. Okay. Other questions?
Just on the point that you were making before about only modeling what is necessary. So for instance, like for next week, for your tutorials ahead, you already know more or less, let's say you know that you want to be in a particular location within the bathhouse, right? And so you already could have a photo of that location. Say you're in the car park, you take a picture of the bathhouse, chimney, the side of it, etc. And your intervention is taking place on the side. So already you could be working that way, right? Something about you sketching by hand, understanding the scheme, having a plan, and then you want to sort of model this object that's going to be next to the bathhouse. So you can be modeling that part, right, and then putting it already there with the photo of the site. And then that dialogue already is much more powerful than just having a computer model object that is void of the site for the image. Because immediately we're talking about scale, we're talking about material relationship to the existing bathhouse, but the photo really contains a lot of atmosphere. The photo contains all that scale, right? Everything is there. You don't need to necessarily be modeling all that in order to have this process development discussion, right, that needs to take place. You understand that how you can be working that way? Also, remember you have these amazing drawings that you've done on the site, right? Those are also really fantastic backdrops, right? For could even be that.
I was going to show this. This is a really helpful way of working.
I'll just say this and you just say that. So let's say you've 3D modeled the bathhouse, and then you can put in the backdrop your drawings. The collective drawing, which, by the way, you guys all need to show. Maybe I'll give you a link somewhere to put it all together. and you take all those facades, right, and you can put those facades there. So immediately you have like a hybrid drawing, right, already happening, in the Rhino. And when you export that image, it really got part of the drawing there, or at least an indication where that is. So in Photoshop, you can sort of quantify it or something. Do you understand? So you started to work in this hybrid way of utilizing the various tools for the purpose of the design process. Yeah, which is different to being, I'm going to develop my design entirely in Rhino. I hope you guys are understanding what you're reiterating.
Yeah, I think we were thinking. So again, it's nice to have a person that gives you some scale, but until you have your site at least kind of massed out, I don't know exactly how this works, but you've got. I'm just going to making up this site massing or whatever, but you've got much better site massing, which is properly drawn images, and you can import those into Rhino as pictures. So you can just type import, and you find yourself a lovely image. Where's it going to be? And it's going to be supported files.
Can you get one of those sort of an image that could be a facade?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to look for. I don't know where.
We looked at that one.
Yeah, where did it go? Hang on. The other way of doing it is you literally just drag and drop it. Is it this one? Yeah. There we go. So here's an example. Here's your example image. And you just drag and drop it into Rhino. And it'll say, hey, well, what do you want to do with this image? And the option is picture, wallpaper, material, environment, texture palette. You can choose picture. And then it'll say first corner of picture. And it's going to come in on the ground or on the seaplane. In fact, it's coming in on my first floor seaplane now because I've set it up that way. And you're going to need to scale it so that it fits the right kind of scale of your thing. But then once you've got it, here we are. And we can use the move tool, which is move, and then pin it to your facade here. And then maybe one of your colleagues has done the next building. And then one of your colleagues has done the building after that. And then, this one is a bit bigger. Whoop, there we go. Do you see where I'm going? You're basically making like a film set or a theater set out of the work that you've already done that kind of surrounds your context. And now suddenly I can believe I'm here. I've got a real sense of presence and ownership, which you don't get in the gray nothing of the digital. That helpful as a sort of tool. Potentially, one thing I would suggest get together and share all of those images and just put them together as like that set, and make sure you share that file around.
On that note, I'll create a link to Drive, so you can all put your images there, so everyone can grab all those. Okay.
Should we take a quick break and then come back and we'll look at some rendering and getting stuff out?
Yeah, just want to say I really appreciate all your attention span and focus. And
yeah, it's a heavy day.
It's been worthwhile. Getting Chris is sort of a real privilege, as you can see. So that's why it's sort of quite intense.
There's a lot to get through, isn't there? Okay.
Right, so shall we be back in 15 minutes? Is that right?